demolish something, you may have rats that come out. But anyway. So as I understand it, I wasn't directly involved, the construction officials was told by the State Department of Community Affairs, which has oversight over Uniform Construction Code, construction officials. They're appointed by the town, but really in one sense they're state officials. But apparently somebody from the Department of Community Affairs told our Madison construction official that he can't issue a demolition permit subject to conditions. And that's what this was all about, the appeal. The back up the Historic Preservation Commission issued a resolution, rather detailed and lengthy, but at the end of the day, it said they could demolish the theater building outside the train station over here. Can't say it, but they said it could be demolished subject to certain conditions. There were 12 conditions. The theater developer owner sought to appeal 3 of those conditions. That's what before tonight. But to back up, so those conditions, supposedly they were, construction official was informed that he could not issue a demo permit subject to conditions. Which is the problem. So what happening, under the Historic Preservation Ordinance of this town, the borough engineer, Robert Vogel, is designated as the administrative official. So Mr. Vogel and Russ Brown, construction official, jointly issued a letter saying you can't get a demolition permit because you haven't addressed all these conditions that are, they use the term prior approvals, which is a term of art. When you go for a building permit, you need to have various approvals in place before you get a building permit. And they're called prior approvals. That's a term of art. So anyway, ultimately, so the developer filed an appeal of that decision. So as a practical matter, what's before the board is review of the 3 conditions that are being appealed. Not all of them. The other ones are not being appealed. They're not appealed. And the board is not charged on this appeal with determining whether the demolition should or shouldn't proceed. It's 3 conditions. There's a rather lengthy record of this. There were 4 meetings where they heard evidence and testimony, and at one meeting where they heard the public, they argued the merits and decided, deliberated, and then a 6th meeting where they talked about the resolution. So and I did go through that record. It's been available to everybody. It's all been filed. It's got boxes in their office, same thing. But the focus was, I would say, I went through the transcripts, there's a large focus on whether the building could be rehabilitated and used as a theater. And some dispute on that, but I think fundamentally that there's really no uncertainty on that point, isn't it? I mean, there was a safety theater group, they thought their focus really, their view, like I can say more of that. The record didn't show enough of an effort had been made to get somebody to step up and buy the theater uses. But the demolition was authorized by the HPC, and the memo which I sent out, I quoted specifically that the 3 conditions, they're on page 2 of my memo, conditions 4, 9, and 10, that are being appealed. I think the focus is, I tried to go through the statute, the ordinance, and try to reconcile them as best I could in the memo. But having said that, I mean, I don't, I think the focus is limited to those 3 conditions and whether they're permissible, I guess, or proper, appropriate, reasonable, whatever adjective you want to apply, because what, under the ordinance and I guess the statute, you've been given the assignment, jurisdiction, and the duty to review that appeal and decide that appeal. It's not a variance, it's not what he thinks good, bad, or indifferent, it's what he thinks is intended by the ordinance and the statute in this case. I think that's what put it, and maybe now it's turn it over to Mr. Wilson. Sure. Okay. A little long-winded, but hopefully. And if you disagree, that's fine.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Just some background. As Gary indicated, the property in question is the movie theater. It's a street address of 14 Lincoln Place. It's designated as block 2702, lot 24. And it is located as the last building at the edge of the Madison Civic Commercial Historic District. And in terms of your zoning map, it's located in the CBD1 zone. The applicant submitted an application, as Mr. Hall indicated, to the planning board for preliminary and final site plan approval on January 15, 2019. That application proposes to demolish the existing structure and construct a multifamily residential apartment building with ground floor retail and underground parking. The project will contain a total of 24 residential units, together with associated common and amenity space and approximately 4,526 square feet of retail space. The applicant also proposed a small theater, or if the property owner could not secure a commercially reasonable theater lease, in the alternative, additional retail space. Included in the 24 residential units are 4 affordable units, which will help the borough meet its obligation under the affordable housing litigation. As provided for under the Madison Borough Code, the planning board application was referred to the Historic Preservation Commission for an advisory review, where the applicant also sought certificates of historic review for both the demolition and the new construction. Throughout the 6 formal sessions on the application, which were in addition to 2 informal sessions, all public, the applicant presented testimony from its structural engineer, Wayne Hostetler, its historic preservation consultant, Robert Kornfeld, and its project engineer, Jeffrey Gertler. It also submitted 2 structural engineering reports and a historic preservation report. The applicant worked with the commission and its professionals, agreeing to preserve historical features of the existing building into the new building, designing the new building in accordance with the design guidelines in your ordinance, and revised its plans several times based on input from the commission and its professionals. The Historic Preservation Commission, as you heard, approved actually 2 certificates of historic review, one for the demolition and one for the new construction. As you also heard, there were certain conditions attached to those certificates. A resolution from the Historic Preservation Commission, which memorialized those certificates, concluded that the demolition of the existing building on the property was appropriate, and with the exception of its size, mass, and height, the improvements in construction proposed on the property were also appropriate. The resolution, as you heard, included 13 conditions on the certificate, some of which relate to demolition. The applicant continues to pay taxes on assessed improvements that the MHPC has deemed, quote, structurally compromised, end quote, for which the Historic Preservation Commission agreed the demolition was, quote, appropriate given its poor structural condition, end quote. Additionally, an owner must demolish improvements by October 1 of a year, or it will be assessed for those improvements for the entire next calendar year. Just a few notes from the hearing on this point. The applicant structural engineer, David Bush, in his report entered into the record as Exhibit A3, concluded that, quote, the demolition of the existing building and construction of a new building is required for any project being considered, end quote. The applicant's second structural engineer, Wayne Hostetler, in his report entered into the record as Exhibit A2, concluded that, quote, portions of the existing building are structurally compromised, end quote. The HPC structural engineer, John McManus, his position is appropriate, as I feel it has been shown the structural soundness and integrity of the building are major concerns to the district as a whole and the adjacent property, the federal post office building, that could be adversely affected if the lines here continue to fall into disrepair. Next, reasons we ask for the reversal of the public theater condition.
Well, I was thinking maybe we should just dig in on the first.
And there brings up one thing I forgot to say, and really it's in my memo, that my reading of reconciling the ordinance and statute was that the HPC has two different roles under the statute and the ordinance. One is on any application of any kind involving property in the historic district to the planning board, or potentially this, if you needed a D variance, you would come here. Every now and then we get one of those, not the district. But the HPC is, they look at it and they can make advisory comments and recommendations to land use. They can't tell the land use board what to do, as I read the statute. It's clear there's a dichotomy, and if you only need a permit, a demolition permit here, or hypothetically a building permit, but you're not a land use board, they can impose mandatory conditions on the permit. I guess. I mean, if you're tearing down a house hypothetically in the district, you need a demolition permit. They can comment on that, and potentially be binding on the construction official, subject to the owner coming here, the theater owners. But that's a dichotomy, and unfortunately, it's not a clear dichotomy because the commission and discussion and it sort of morphed back and forth between the two comments on the new development versus, well, the old current building could come down. And that's the difficulty, because as I read it, comments on the new building are recommended to the planning board, because obviously, and not obviously, in this case, the theater owner, the developer, proposed to build a new building, and there was a lot of discussion about how that, making that fit in. But I think those were matters, and the theater owner, as I understand it from the plans, contemplated, requested with the planning board a height variance, which is a discretionary power of the planning board, not the HPC. They have no authority to grant or deny. They can say, we think you should do it. They can't say you can't do it. And that's how as I read this situation, the two morphed into each other. Because, and that's really, I guess, condition 3, we'll get to that, the third one, that really deals with that. But I want to throw that out, because that's really, you know, and it's difficult, because I understand how, you know, tearing down a building district is one thing, and you want to know what's going to happen next, and is it going to happen right? But as I read the law, is the next thing happening right is for the land use board, subject to any and all input from the HPC on that topic, because otherwise, I don't know where you draw the line otherwise. You have a site plan application, and also, Mr. Wilson can jump in, but as I read the paperwork, one of the arguments was that, well, we need more height and more dwelling units to make it economic to keep a 90-seat theater in the ground floor, which they did propose to do. It's in there. They're contesting the fact that it has no limits, the condition is worded. But they acknowledge that they did, that their plans did show that, but they, as part of the mix of, in order to do that, we need bigger building. And that's an argument that should be made at the planning board, not the HPC. Because the planning board is the one that has to, you know, they have to assess the variance, and if it's what they want to do is deemed, recommended to be harmful to the district, presumably the planning board, that goes to the negative criteria part of it. On the positive criteria, they can say it's a hardship or hey, we'll give you this public benefit, but in order to do that, we need a variance. I think that's, it complicates things. It's not a clear-cut difference. So the only way I can reconcile that, even to the statute, the ordinance, is that's the difference. Certainly the HPC has a legitimate interest in what happens with a new bill. As I read the statute, that's by making recommendations and comments to the planning board, who can and should give due consideration to that, but it's not us.
And Gary, just a question from me. Did they have to create a combined resolution around demolition and construction? These can't be segmented out in terms of resolutions.
I don't know, I couldn't. It could. I mean, they were dealt together and they morphed over each other. I went back just before I came here this evening. I reread the discussion. Have to go that way? I don't know. But it seemed to make more sense not to resolve one before the other. Because
We don't want to be before the planning board in posture with the conditions that we're appealing. That's the point of us asking for relief from you.
right, particularly condition one about bulk and size, which I think that's the one that was squarely.
Well, it's hard for me to envision that you would interpret municipal land use law and the HPC ordinance such that they could create a condition, mandatory condition that infringes on the authority of the land use board or prevents them from managing that process the way they feel they should. And that's a concern here.
Yeah.
Right? In all of these. And with this one, I have concerns with each one of those things. Some of them are unique, but another concern I have here is that under the ordinance, the borough's ordinance, they need only satisfy the requirements, demolition requirements of the borough. And what the HPC has done, the resolution does, is it keeps on them additional criteria before they can go forward. And relating that to what we do here, my concern is that we're fair. And that, we have to be fair in what we do and not create unreasonable practical difficulties for people, create burdens on applicants that aren't there. And so my concern is that to put these additional requirements that are above and beyond what's in the ordinance is problematic. So I'm sympathetic to what the applicant is saying about the kind of delays that they would incur. I also have some concerns about a mandatory condition associated with an application that requires approval of the land use board. And I just don't see how you could do that. I'm still struggling with that. When I read municipal land use law and the powers of the planning board and the powers of the board of adjustment, and the fact that they can't delegate those authorities to other boards, and the ability to put mandatory conditions, I can't find it in municipal land use law, to be honest with you. So I have concerns about that. I think it should be recommendatory only if it were to stay. That's my meaning on it. I mean, we can debate this back and forth, but I've read all the provisions, the applicable provisions of municipal land use law. Spent a lot of time on this HPC ordinance. Spent a lot of time studying Gary's analysis as well as the record, also the appellant's arguments, and I just don't see how you could, again, keep this criteria on an applicant and think that's fair.
I'm in agreement.
Mr. Hall, I didn't know, what's the process going to be here in terms of, I don't know if there's going to be consideration, condition by condition, it sounds like, I don't know.
Well, I guess we wanted to, then I started cutting off target, so I don't know, for the chairman.
And I didn't know whether you anticipated the public making statements or not.
Well, it's a public hearing, it's required to be a public hearing at some point, but I think that's the chairman at the time.
I don't know, maybe we wait on the public portion of it until a little bit later on, and we debate board is on each one of these three things. And then we go to the public, it's from the public, and then we come back and probably deliberate a little bit more. Is that reasonable to you?
Sounds great.
Okay, so just to continue on with this, the development approvals condition, I'm looking for input from the board beyond what I've said, if you agree with me or if you have other things to add, but I'd like to move this along.
I definitely agree with you, Joe. The demands that the HPC, I can understand the HPC wanting to protect their part of this project. They want to be very careful and have the end product be what the applicant is envisioning, but may not happen if all the conditions that the HPC has put in there has identified. But in the same light, those conditions are going to create major stumbling blocks if they're held as they are, that this demolition permit won't be issued unless they agree to conditions. So where I'm at is similar to where you're at. This is going to create a lot of problems. And it's not really going to be beneficial to the development. It's going to prolong everything. To wait for some of these approvals and then try to get the demolition going, it's almost like doing it backwards. I mean,
It's like a cart before the horse.
yes, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what's concerning me. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Let me throw one comment on there. I didn't, the record that, as I understand the rationale or this, for that is, well, we don't want you to tear down a building and have a vacant lot that you never build. Of course, getting out approvals doesn't mean you're going to build either. And the converse is, there are some comments that the current situation of a vacant building sitting there is not a great thing either. I think Mr. Wilson read a quotation from somebody mentioning that along the way. So it's plus or minus, I mean, record here, resolution. Say, yeah, you can't fix it, but you can't tear it down yet.
Which
I
makes
have a problem
sense.
reconciling that. If someone's property, they can't be saved and converted and reused. And the owners have a right to tear their building down.
You certainly do. And I think there's adequate testimony in the record that the building has to come down. It's not structurally sound. It does not make any sense to try to make it structurally sound. It's vacant, has been vacant for a prolonged period of time. You're not doing anybody any good by letting it sit there.
Yeah, and I don't see how that determination, I said, it seemed pretty uncontested in the record I read. And I don't see how this changes that conclusion. Yeah, the building can't be saved, you can't tear it down yet. I mean, I don't know how you do that.